Some of the policies of the past and the people that have been involved in the past that make Fort Collins a great city, which it is, I think we can go all the way back to Frank Avery and Joseph Mason and what they did as far as planning out the city and doing this stuff, as far as the roads and the streets and where things are going to be. Then you jump forward 100 years to Bill Morgan over at CSU, with Lila Morgan being his wife, along with Frank Johnson and Carl Carson, who happened to be mayor at the time, that formed the Community Foundation for the sole purpose of building the Lincoln Center, which was where I went to school back in the day. So those people were very forward-thinking as far as getting everything off the ground, and it's snowballed since with the passion and the people in Fort Collins wanting to make everything better whenever they can. There's hardly anybody that doesn't want Fort Collins to be a better place. Well, you know, I grew up here, and back then it was Opie Taylor's Mayberry. You know, we did everything. You just had to come home before dark. And it was a great place to grow up. However, whenever we did something, it was going to Greeley for shopping, go to Denver for anything that was entertainment-wise. And that was how it was back in the day. Today, everything is first class. I mean, we have first class parks, great bike trail, great schools. We have good shopping when we go there. It's just got too many things going on between the climate, the mountains, the Poudre River. So anyway, we're in this banana belt, and you've heard about the banana belt, I'm sure, and it comes into play all the time, where we don't get dumped on and don't have the severe weather that other places in the United States has. That's number one. But number two, we just have a lot of people that are trying to make this place the best place it can be. Well, the big picture is we had major employers. We had HP and Celestica, which employed thousands of people. And today, those have been diminished greatly as far as critical mass in each one of those companies. But you know, it's funny, City Council, number one, there's 2 council members from the time I was a mayor still on City Council, or when I was on council, Kelly and Jerry. So they're back recycling. So it's pretty much the same as far as council is concerned. Now, government on the other side is pretty much the same too. There's still that same attitude of, the new term now is world class. Back in the day in our class, everything was first class, but now world class is a step up. And that's what the event is to achieve. And I think it's hard to do that consistently on all the things, especially when revenue is a challenge. To be honest, the only thing that's different from 23 years ago is those major employers. Old Town Square was just taking off then. Today, downtown is a mecca. You come down here on weekends, Saturday, Sunday, it's amazing how many people are downtown. And that was not the case in '89. In fact, in 1978, getting back to there, where Lucky Joe's is now, that whole block was either a vacant lot or a bar or semi-industrial use, such as Black's Glass and Fort Collins Glass are right next to each other. Today, shopping has actually transcended down to Loveland on a lot of things. Now it's coming back with Front Range, and now with the Foothills Mall, I used to want to say Fashion Mall, Foothills Mall, with their big plans and renovations. If you look at their plans on the east side of the mall, it's just a duplication of what's in Old Town. You know, with the ice skating rink, with the theater, with the fountains, with the playgrounds, and all that kind of stuff that we have down here. And I'm not opposed to that. I relish that it'll happen. And so it'll bring more people from a regional basis. We are now going to be the hub. Back to what you were talking about, is we'll be the hub of shopping in Northern Colorado again. Back in '88, there was a committee put together called Choices 95. And this was similar to a tax issue that we do every few years. And this was to identify those projects or problems that we needed to correct and to submit that for a tax. Well, that happened, and they came back with a quarter-cent sales tax. It was put on the ballot. No one on council would endorse it because they felt it was a losing issue, that it wasn't a good tax environment for taxes to pass. So, being the mayor, I went ahead and took the bulls by the horn, stuck my neck out on this deal, and I went out and raised all the money. Now, I shouldn't have been doing this. I raised all the money, organized the advertising, the billboards, spent the collateral material, or did the collateral materials, advertised, and the issues were, which you can't do today, all these issues were bundled. So we had about 11 intersections and street widenings that were done. The big issue was Timberline Road going from Prospect over to Summit View Drive, which means it crossed the river. New bridge, people were opposed to that, but that was the big issue for this deal. But the other major issue was having a senior center, because we didn't have one at the time. Club Tico was fulfilling that need on a very bad basis because, of course, it's a second-story unit, which didn't work too well. But anyway, now the senior center was part of that project. Fossil Creek Park was the acquisition of Fossil Creek Park was part of that bond issue, or that tax issue. The Poudre Valley, or the Poudre Fire Authority, had Battalion 10 land was purchased out of it. All kinds of things happened with this $23,200,000 and some odd $1,000. But the two big issues were Timberline and the senior center. So that was probably my proudest moment to have that happen. You know, we had an issue back in that day, and I'm not sure of the exact language, but there was a petition passed that was to prohibit discrimination in the workplace or hiring based on an individual's sexual orientation. That, at face value, was presented to us. They had enough petitions to put on the ballot, so we decided we could pass it or we could reject it. I bet you I received 2,500 letters. That was before emails. I mean, we had email back then, but most people didn't have it. 2,500 letters on both sides of the issues. The issue was extreme on both sides. We had police presence inside and outside the council chambers just to make sure nothing, because it was a pretty emotional issue. Churches were on one side of the issue, gay and lesbians were on the other side of the issue. Churches were, in some churches, it split churches up. It split everybody up in town. It was really not a pretty scene. And it took forever. But that was our most contentious issue, and it went on for months and months. And then we made the decision to put it on the ballot. Since it was such a big issue, so emotional, that we decided 7 people shouldn't make this decision. I was lucky enough to go to Moscow to represent the United States as the mayor of Fort Collins. There was a mayor from Elmira, New York, from St. Joe, Missouri, a couple other ones I forgot, to be honest. And we were over there for 8 days, meeting with the mayors, like 28 mayors of Russia, USSR at the time. And so, luckily in my case, one of the towns, or the cities, was Stanislav, which is a town of probably 4 million people. And the mayor of Stanislav could see my name on my passport was Stanley. That's my first name. No one knows that, and no one will ever watch this. They'll never know. So anyway, he took me under his arm, And he had a cultural minister with him that spoke English. So anyway, there were 3 or 4 mayors from different voices that we'd hang around and do everything together for that 8 days. And this was a cultural exchange, mostly to do with students that would come from the United States and travel by bus throughout Russia as far as doing that cultural exchange for weeks, and vice versa, they'd come over here. So anyway, I had a wonderful time in Moscow. Everybody talked about how dreary it was and stuff, and they showed me a good time, and I had a good time. That was fun. The other part, when we were trying to woo Anheuser-Busch to come to Fort Collins, back in the day, Roy Romer was our governor, and he was trying to get them to go to Pueblo. Pueblo needed an economic hit. All of a sudden, brewmasters come into play. So the brewmaster had, they analyzed the water that Pueblo used. All the water that comes to Pueblo comes through the mine tailings up in the mountains and comes into Pueblo, and they rejected it. So now Roy Romer was pushing Greeley. So now the challenge was on Greeley, Fort Collins. Anyway, that was a fun deal to do. It was an important thing to do, and it helped a lot. It helped the city with their tax base. Now, we gave them $60 million in revenue bonds for their infrastructure as related to sewer, water, and public improvements. That got paid back within 5 years. So anyway, they're close to that. And so now everything else now is gravy. That's economic development. It's when you incentivize someone to come, but you have to have a break-even point, and then you start making money on that investment. And of course now we're making the money on the investment and have been for 15, 20 years. Starting off with would be Anheuser-Busch was a huge issue, and the good part was as far as the tax base and employment. The other one was back when Gene Mitchell wanted to do Old Town Square, he made a presentation to the board to do this $18 million renovation down in Old Town. And it was great. But the numbers, he was going to charge $12 a square foot, triple net. Rents right next door were $6 gross. So it was a big problem there. But even at $12 a square foot, if he was to get it, the price per square foot for the property was $178 per square foot. $12 doesn't service $178 in costs. So the council member said, what do you want to do? Well, back then, I was in real estate, and probably one of the only real estate people to ever get on P&Z, not on city council. But I said, this makes no financial sense. It'll be bankrupt in 3 years, but let's do it. It'll be the best thing for the community that we could do. And we did, and it's what happened too. And Gene was a visionary, more so than anybody, but from a financial point of view, it never was ever going to make sense. One of the decisions that we made that was not good was the city traffic engineer and myself, back when I was the mayor, analyzed, because everyone was opposed to this northern bypass, to get trucks and traffic off of Jefferson Street. The idea of Jefferson Street is a blockage for having this promenade down to the Poudre River, and to have other development that happens all the way down, which will be what I think will be in the future in 25 years will still happen. Anyway, it was all wired. In fact, the design was perfect. Use line for a service road, loop over, avoid Andersonville, avoid Buckingham, Alta Vista, avoid Alta Vista, and keep away from Lindenwood. Well, I had the votes. It was a 4-3 vote in favor of it. I counted them before I went there. During the meeting, one person changed their mind, so it became 3-4. So we were #1 in the state for funding. We had 100% funding for this project. Everybody wanted it. We turned it down. The state put us at the bottom of the barrel. We didn't get that, they'll never consider it again. Now, hopefully 25 years later, 30 years later, we'll have a bypass either at Douglas or Owl Canyon, and we'll get that refunded. I've always done what I consider, whether politics on one side or the other. I think I'm a little bit, socially liberal on some of these things, but I think whatever is right is what you should do. But I think you need to plan and do these plans on a continuing basis for 5 years and 20 years, and then just keep doing that every 5 years. The other one is to hire the best talent, similar to a football team, which we had hired the best talent. And but if we hire the best city manager, the best CFOs, the best planning directors that we can have, and all with forward thinking and trying to make it the best community, that's the best thing that new leaders can do, is hire the best people to do it. Because the leaders, they may give decisions, but the ones that develop everything is really staff, because we are not a strong mayor form of government. So what's going to happen over the next 25 years in Fort Collins? I think Woodward Governor will be our second largest employer in town with their acquisition and going into Lincoln Greens. You will see a northern bypass. You will see the 2 downtown hotels that will be in place by that time. Hopefully we'll have one in the next couple of years. You will see more microbreweries come into effect. Kelly also will be seeking his 6th term on council. And I think there'll be Glade Reservoir will be built. I'm opposing it right now, but I'll support it as soon as they put in the minimum stream flow, so that Fort Collins can have that running through all the time. So right now I'm opposed to it, but I'll support it then. So I think water storage would be important. I think they can handle the flushing a couple times a year. That'll solve the wetlands problem. So I'm in favor of that. In 100 years, I think, in 25 years, getting back to that, Fort Collins Loveland Airport will expand, whether it's not only lengthwise, have the control tower. It will have become a real focal point for industry in Fort Collins and Loveland, and really Timnath and Greeley, even though Greeley has their own airport. But we're a natural place to do that. So I think that'll be a big boom and necessary. In 100 years, all those microbreweries that are being built now will all consolidate into maybe just a couple. The railroad tracks will be removed from downtown. It won't be in the next 25 years, but it will be in 100 years.